Hi, everyone. Welcome to Carolina Poets. We are here with another wonderful edition of hashtag Poetry Goes Viral. My name is Kimberly Simms, and I am the host tonight. We are very excited to bring you another special celebration of Hispanic Heritage / Latinx Heritage / Filipino American Month celebration. We've got three amazing poets that we're going to be presenting to you tonight. We are going to have time for discussion at the end, so definitely stick around. And also our poets all have books for sale, and they'll be sharing those links in the comments. Make sure if you have time, there's a little button below where you can actually hit share to share the stream to your own page so that other people can see it. Definitely like, comment, heart, ask questions, interact. We've just built such a beautiful community since we started this program. Actually, it's been almost 6 months ago, back in March, when we started Poetry Goes Viral as a way for poets who had book tours that were being canceled during the pandemic to still get out and reach their audiences. And so we have just been so excited to bring so many wonderful poets to all of you. And actually, it takes a village and a team to do something like this. So it is myself, Derek Berry, and also Andrew Clark, who puts this event together. And we are here every Thursday night at 7. Next Tuesday, I did want to mention, next Tuesday, we're also having a special event that is in partnership with the Charleston Free Verse Poetry Festival, and that is going to be on Tuesday the 13th. So definitely, if you're around, tune back in right here on Tuesday so that you can, we've got a really great lineup of poets that night. We've got Keith Flynn, we've got myself, we've got Derek, we have Andrew, we have Joy Priest, Tony Robles, and a whole host of really talented people that'll be here next Tuesday, so definitely don't miss that. Tonight, however, I'm so excited to introduce these wonderful poets. I've actually been able to hear all of them read in person before, which just seems like a beautiful dream now that it's been so long. We've got to go to many live events. And so tonight, I'm very happy that we're going to have with us Leslie Sainz. We also have Santiago Garcia Castilon. And we also have, and I think I pronounced that wrong, my apologies. And we have Tony Robles, and they are all going to just share some of their wonderful work with us tonight. The first poet we're going to have on this evening is Leslie Sainz. And actually, Leslie, I first met when she was a writer in residence in Hub City. And I did a few readings with her, and actually had her at my book launch. So she's just really fabulous, and she's gone on to do a lot of fabulous things since she was here with us in Spartanburg. She's a first-generation Cuban-American born and raised in Miami, Florida. A 2019 National Poetry Series Finalist, she received her MFA in poetry from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she was the editor-in-chief of Devil's Lake. Her work has appeared in or is forthcoming from AGNI, Jubilat, Narrative, Black Warrior Review, Ninth Letter, Hayden's Ferry, and many other esteemed journals. She also is currently doing a lot of amazing things that she will tell you all about. I'm getting ready to bring her onto the stage, which I'm just so thrilled. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Kimberly. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Yes, it's so good to see you too. And I don't want to use up your time, so I'm going to kind of bow the stage and step backstage here for a minute. But I just can't wait to hear you read. Thank you so much. Oh, wrong one. We'll do that one more time. Let me get down here. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties tonight. And
all right. Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you to the whole team at Carolina Poets. It's an honor to read for you guys tonight. And thank you to everybody who came out to hear some poetry on a Thursday night. And let me just say that it is an honor to read with Santiago and Tony. I am very much looking forward to hearing your work. Tonight, I'm going to read a couple poems from my manuscript in progress, which really works to question the relationships between myth, ritual, and resistance on the Republic of Cuba. So the first poem is called Ño, and it is dedicated to Los Balseros. And for those who don't know, Los Balseros are the Cuban people who risked their lives in homemade rafts to escape Cuba and make it to the United States. So this is Ño. There is no country where the dead don't float. Men and children going, having gone, lung wet, across thickened water. Be it the body to know what's missing, to call back the colors. At sea, the stomach is a bugle, although I've heard it called a scream. Oil drums headless as monarchs, styrofoam on the knees, said of a thing under or over, here or there. The orchids are lovely this time of year, and the women writing. What covers the land, and is the land, much in us still. I'm old school, so I still use some paper copies, so you may see me flipping those. I'm also a little bit thirsty, so excuse me. This second poem from that same project is called Libreta de Abastecimiento, which translates to supplies booklet, and it's actually the food rationing supply book that's that the Cuban people use. Libreta de Abastecimiento. No grazing dead acre, no stretching the unfit, no flower, no four-legged wealth wobbling to pasture. No empathy spell, no grease slab, no hatchlings, no dairy, no intact hard palate. No rot liability, no armfuls, no alchemy, no hope kernel, no furnace. No brightening fuel, no delicacy, no phantom taste, no in bloom, no tender, no water, no after, no ice. This third poem is called Sunday Wounded, and it is dedicated to the Ladies in White, which, for those who don't know, are an opposition movement in Cuba comprised of the wives and female relatives of those who were imprisoned for speaking out against the government. So this is Sunday Wounded. The walls of Santa Rita swell like capillary. Hundreds of mother wives dressed as doves recite the reasons. For the seal held, para la mala sangre, to argue on behalf of ghosts. Outside the church, men with bladed knuckles intimidate for sport. They lean on their old rectangular cars, make smoke on command. When mass is finished, the mother wives take to the streets. They move about Havana the way a fly enters a skull. Every step a vigil, every breath surveyed. Liberty, liberty, liberty. They link hands and birth a prison. The men open like cylinders. Liberty, liberty, liberty. Howls between blows. Flesh folding into itself like a flag, white, deadened. The women that escape are followed, placed on 24-hour watch. The tongueless republic, unable to lick its wounds, does not sleep. So the next three poems that I'm going to read are sort of the backbone of the manuscript, and they are a series of American sonnets for the Orishas of Santeria. To be a bit reductive, I guess you could say the Orishas are the deities of Santeria, and so it was important to me that I spoke to them and through them on the page. So this first one is Sonnet for Yamaya, and she is the Orisha of the living ocean and the divine feminine. Sonnet for Yamaya. Mother, I am not married, but I am giving fullness, am conjuring, egret in flight, scent of powder, sea foam. The cowrie shells speak, but not of their past. First, abandonment, a turning over. Then, snail exposed to air, all cruelties. Mother, help me not fear comparison. So much depends on this globe you've painted brown, soil of the trout lily, body in diapuse. In your sea of nature and harmony, I want to live, be live as commodity. The satchel of stones I leave and the corners I make holy. Only the act of making is assured. This next American sonnet from the series is Sonnet with Ogun. And Ogun is the Orisha of metal, energy, hunting, invention. He's a very masculine figure. Sonnet with Ogun. Platanos frying in a cast iron skillet. Wind gone wrong, gone the tamarind tree from the overgrown easement. I've aged. Once, a Yankee lover tried to make me tostones. He didn't know you have to fry them twice, a show of muscle in between. Now, I brandish a plate that is not mine, from a cupboard that is not mine, and a house I no longer live in. The men working on the neighbor's renovation play the same song on repeat from a small silver boombox, even though their hammering eclipses all other sound. At the dinner table, I learned that science no longer recognizes the shape of my father's spine. Later, when I clean the kitchen, I drop a knife on the floor again and again, just as an excuse to touch it. And the third American sonnet that I'm going to read is Sonnet with Arula, and Arula is the Orisha of divination. At my fourth consulta, the Babalao says he will recover and she will not. My eyeline greens. I lean like a shovel, lower like a handprint. This is a daughter's future, plural, legible only in the script of another. The back of my neck peeling in sheets thin enough to dissolve on a tongue. I am to spend more time in tall grass, watching the cycle of bugs. I am to spend more time cradling weight in my palms, especially fruit that hides its rot. White smoke waves the room. I say thank you in a language I used to cover my mouth before speaking. Blessings and energy, aire and ashe. On the drive home, a cast of pregnant land crabs scuttle across the road at the request of the moon. I know the moon does not think me important. The stars could be showing me their backs, and I couldn't do a thing about it. These next two poems that I'm going to read are brand new. I've written them, I think, in the past month or so, and it's a thread that I'm trying to establish in the manuscript. This first one's a little hard to read, so forgive me while I take a sip of water real quick in preparation. So this first one is called Operation Good Times, and it's essentially in response to Operation Mongoose, which was an extensive terrorist campaign really carried out by the CIA against Cuba, and specifically Operation Good Times was the covert operation to distribute a doctored photo of Fidel Castro across the island of Cuba that showed him obese, surrounded by lavish food and naked women as a means of speaking to his largesse in comparison to what the Cuban people were experiencing. So this poem is called Operation Good Times. And I should say, too, that these next few poems are heavily influenced by Gertrude Stein. I've been reading a lot of Stein lately. And so you may or may not see that influence on the page if I did it successfully. But this is Operation Good Times. It could reflect poorly on the regime if this were to get out. If this were to get out the way the poor would get out on the regime, could you reflect on getting out of the regime if you could reflect on this? If this reflected the way out, if this were one? Would this reflect poorly, this regime? It would. Could it get out of this? Were this to get out, it could. This could get out if this reflected out poorly. Could it get poorer? It would. Pour on the way out, pour out the regime to get out poorly, to get on out, the out, get out, get out, get out. And this next poem, which will be my last, I'm very excited to hear from Santiago and Tony, so I'm gonna keep myself brief. This next poem and my last poem is titled Self-Determination Theory, excuse me, and it does have an epigraph from Gertrude Stein, which reads, "There is something in this native land business, and you cannot get away from it." I sit in the living room. In the living room, my mother chokes on something cold and sharp. I launch an investigation. She is wearing a blue cotton shirt. Her shoulders are showing. The television is hush. I conclude she is struggling with a unique idea, one she should keep. Just like that, sparks, reds, whites. It is the savior mother calls United States. United States places his arms around her abdomen and applies sudden upward pressure. She heaves. The volume of the not news channel raises, and the sound alerts my father in the kitchen. To enter the living room, my father must step over the bodies of other Spanish-speaking men. He does so with ease. I weep in the living room. In the living room, my father watches United States grope my mother, and though he is a jealous man, my father says nothing because he, too, accepts no other touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie. That was so beautiful. I love those new pieces too. Wow. Really lovely. How did you get into writing all those sonnets?
Oh, goodness. Actually, I started writing that project when I was in Spartanburg at the residency. But I get in the habit of doing 30-30s with friends, and I'd always wanted to write a more like a Petrarchian sonnet. And then I think over time, I just realized I wanted to abandon the rhyme scheme and the iambic altogether. And so, yeah, those just kind of came about.
Awesome. Well, I loved it. And definitely please share. What is the name of your most recent book?
I actually don't have a collection out. So these are taken from my MFA thesis that I've been developing over the past couple of years.
Soon there will be a book out. I know
fingers
that you're
crossed. Yeah, I've gotten some nibbles, so fingers crossed.
So many literary magazines. So that was just beautiful. Thank you so much. And we'll pull you back in at the end. So thank you. Okay, that was Leslie, which was really wonderful. And we're going to bring up our next reader now. Thank you so much. We've got Santiago Garcia Castilon here with us. Actually, and I just want to apologize. We had a typo in a little bit of our publicity. So we have his name correctly here for the next section of the reading. We are very honored to have him here. Vera Gomez, who is a poet in Greenville, South Carolina, has brought him to Greenville before to do readings, where I had the joy of hearing him read. So I'm very excited to share Santiago with all of you tonight. He holds a degree in English philosophy from the University of Oviedo, Spain, and a master's and PhD in Spanish literature from the University of Illinois. He is a professor of Spanish at Western Carolina University. He is also an award-winning poet and novelist with 20 books to his credit. Santiago has been selected to represent Spain at the International Poetry Festivals of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and he has given numerous lectures and poetry recitals in more than 15 countries in 4 continents. That is an impressive resume there. So we're definitely looking forward to hearing some of the wonderful poetry you have tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for this very generous presentation. That only means that I'm a little older and I've had more time to do stuff, but I am pleased, I'm honored to be here sharing some of the things I write with you all, even if I cannot see you.
Yes.
I write primarily in Spanish. I do write some in English, but I write mostly in Spanish.
Wonderful.
My poetry and the novels that I published, but I do have a couple of bilingual poetry collections, but I intend to read mostly in Spanish today.
Okay, awesome.
The first couple of poems that I will read are from the collection Objetos Desechables, Disposable Objects. And I will try to do something, and a little experiment. I'm not a technology expert, but I will try to share the screen so that you all can see something else, because I have a PowerPoint. So if you allow me about half a minute, I'll try to set this while I talk. Hopefully, you'll be able to see what I'm intend to show you. Can you see that? Can you see me or the texts of the poems? Okay, well, let me assume that you can see this. The first poem I'm reading se titula Sur Profundo, or Deep South. I lived in Georgia for a number of years, and I live in North Carolina now, so it looks like I can't escape the South. This poem, Deep South, is an homage to those who fought for the civil rights. As you can see from that picture, it brings back memories from the late 50s and 60s. And the poem goes as follows. Deep South. A pastor preaches equality at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and throughout Montgomery spreads a voracious fire, an earthquake which can't be stopped by a corrupt sheriff, a mob covered in white robes, a truckload of rifles sent by the governor, or Wallace himself. They are marching in Selma. They cross bridges, wade creeks, defy misunderstanding, hate, disdain. They are tired of the long walk, but even more tired of waiting. They are fed up with chains and humiliations. The time has come, and Rosa Parks gives a hint of a smile sitting at the front of the bus. The next poem I'm reading deals with a very serious problem of our society. And when I say our society, I'm originally from Spain, but our society is the whole world. This is a problem that afflicts Spain, the US, and every other country, and it's the problem of domestic violence. And I wrote this brief poem titled in Spanish, Urgencias, or in English, ER, emergency room. And I will read this in English as well, and then the rest of the poems I will read in Spanish. ER. She arrived with a bad gash on her cheek. It was, she said, a silly accident, a fall. The floor was sleek, and the nurse pretended to believe her. Hardly 19, and already no innocence, no spark in those harsh, opaque eyes hardened by grief and fear. But nothing hurts more than the blows you cannot see. The next poem will be in Spanish. Is a poem about a certain type of people who live a life of hypocrisy. And I titled this poem Historia de un ganador, in Spanish, a winner's story. And you will see why this is a winner in quotation marks. Tuvo una infancia de cuento de hadas en un barrio residencial con control de acceso y cámaras de circuito cerrado. Cuando era un adolescente, su papá le compró un auto alemán descapotable entre viaje y viaje de negocios, acompañado por una eficiente secretaria a quien dobla en edad. Su mamá, mientras tanto, se procuraba masajes terapéuticos con un individuo moreno que frecuentaba los gimnasios y las damas maduras. Su novia del liceo cometió la torpeza de quedarse embarazada, pero todo se arregló sin mucho ruido. Se graduó de Princeton tras no pocas llamadas de papá a varios amigos influyentes. A los 20 y pocos años ya tiene una importante cartera de valores y está prometido con una chica muy decente a quien conoció en el club social. La vida del ganador es simplemente perfecta. So this is a poem that I wrote, obviously, with a heavy load of irony and criticism towards these people who live a life of, as I said, of hypocrisy, but who are, in the eyes of society, winners, hence the title, Historia de un ganador. The next poem I am reading was the result of a visit to the homeland of Leslie's ancestors. I've been to Cuba several times, and the first time I went to Cuba, I befriended several people, including a music player, guitar player, an elder citizen, an old guy who was playing his guitar on the street, and we chit-chatted a little bit. And I wrote this poem, which is not really a poem, it's just the story of how we met. And he claimed to have played for Ernesto Che Guevara, so he told me. And so I wrote this poem and titled it El Guitarrista del Che, the Che Guevara's guitar player. Al principio me atrajo el rasgueo de una guitarra y una voz algo desafinada. Un anciano de guayabera blanca y rugosa piel negra, curtida en 1000 batallas, entonaba una canción al comandante y me detuve. No le pregunté su nombre. Nos tomamos una bucanero y la voz del anciano negro de guayabera blanca se quebró al contarme que había tocado para el Che en Santa Clara. Nos acabamos las cervezas y nos despedimos. Yo seguí caminando por el Prado y él se quedó allí, con su enorme sonrisa y su guitarra, diciéndoles cosas subidas de tono a las muchachas. Mami, vente pa' acá que te lo toco rico. Y yo pensé en lo bello que es sentirse libre. As a follow-up to this story, because rather than more than a poem, this is actually a story, which happened the way I've just told you. He asked me, do you have guitar strings? No, I was singing along with him. I sat with him, brought him a couple of cans of Bucanero beer. We had a good conversation. And he asked me if I had any guitar strings with me. You know, who travels to another country with guitar strings? I can't even play the guitar, so I didn't have guitar strings. So a couple of years later, I went back to Cuba to another conference, also to give a poetry reading. And I remember this guy, and I brought guitar strings. And I walked along the Prado Boulevard in downtown Havana, and I saw a guy playing the guitar, and I thought it was him. I approached the guy, and I told him, "Hey, I'm the one who was here 2 years ago. Remember that you asked me for guitar strings?" And he looked at me and said, "Oh, you must be talking about my brother. Yeah, he told me that there was this Spanish guy, but he passed a few months ago." So this guy that I wrote the poem about was by then was dead, but I had the guitar strings, which I gave to his brother, and that's how the story ended. The next poem I'm reading is titled Un continente en unos ojos. A continent, the whole continent in these two eyes. And it's an image that I found online of a beautiful, beautiful African girl with these very eloquent eyes, with a big smile on her face. And I wrote the poem Un continente en unos ojos. Te mira con esos ojos negros, enormes ventanales desde donde descubre que el mundo no está hecho a su medida. Te mira con un rostro inocente y hasta parece ser feliz, mientras alguien con un iPhone le pide una sonrisa. Aún no ha descubierto casi nada, aún no sabe qué peligros aguardan en la próxima curva de la vida. Tal vez ahora, mientras contemplas la foto, ya no esté sonriente. Tal vez ya haya dejado de ser aquella niña. Hasta es posible que algo o alguien haya apagado el brillo de esos ojos inmensos con los que te mira. Por eso quiero ahora perpetuar el momento, congelar el instante en que un iPhone capturó su inocencia, antes de que las lágrimas rueden por sus mejillas, antes de que el silencio logre apagar su voz, antes de que el camino se vuelva tortuoso y se encuentre de golpe con las curvas inciertas de la vida. I will continue, and as I get close to the end, I'm not sharing the screen anymore. Let me see. I will read a couple of sonnets as well. I have a book collection poetry collection that is all sonnets. It's titled Las Huellas de Erato, and it's a series of sonnets, and I will read from this collection a couple of sonnets, and they are very they are Petrarchan in style. They are very formally traditional, with the 2 quatrains and 2 tercets, which is the standard structure of the Italian and the Spanish sonnet. And the first one is La comunión del sacrílego. Y dice así: Me acerco hasta tu altar piadosamente. Me postro de rodillas, y a mi altura se muestra en su esplendor una espesura. Voy sediento y me sacio en tu corriente. Me encuentro con tu carne frente a frente. Su sabor me enloquece y me tortura. Comulgo entre tus piernas con locura, saboreando tu licor ardiente. Bendita esta pasión que necesita la manzana prohibida en el vergel, donde tu cuerpo con mi amor palpita. Yo como y bebo irreverente de él, y no creo en más Dios que el que en ti habita, ni hay más cielo que el cielo de tu piel. And the second one, and it will be the poem with which I will finish this reading this evening, is titled Las fronteras del amor, the borders of love. And with this poem, I won a prize, the first prize in an international poetry competition about 3 years ago. And it's a love poem, and this is how it goes. Amor es un corcel que libre trota, un torrente bajando una ladera, un sueño inalcanzable, una quimera, un arpegio encerrado en una nota. Una búsqueda ciega, una derrota, una eterna y radiante primavera, una desesperante y dulce espera, un mar que siempre cabe en una gota. Es amor o un camino misterioso o una senda 1000 veces transitada que te quita la vida o da reposo. El punto de partida y la llegada, el placer más esquivo y doloroso, y fuera de sus límites no hay nada. Thank you. That's all. I don't get any sound.
I'm so sorry, my mic was muted. I apologize for that. Santiago, I'm so sorry. I've been a terrible host of this tonight, but how can we find your books?
Some of the book, well, the earlier books, I have 11 poetry collections published, and the earlier ones are long gone because they were published like 30 years ago. The most recent one, gosh, I don't remember, was published in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I believe it's available online somewhere. And the bilingual one that is in, all the poems are in English and in Spanish. It's the same poem in both languages, written in English and Spanish. Is Objetos Desechables, Disposable Objects. This was published in Spain, but it's available, I think, still easily available in the US market through, I guess, Amazon, and then of course in Spanish bookstores, mostly in Spain, but I think it can be ordered.
I love that name, Disposable Objects. That's fabulous.
Yeah, because that was my idea of what my poems are. After all, they are not that. No, they are in the big picture of things and life. I mean, the poems matter too little, and they are nothing but disposable objects. In fact, in one of the readings I gave years ago, a couple of years ago, when the book was published, I was reading poems and tearing pages from the book and just throwing them on the floor. So I ruined a copy of the book. I ruined a copy of the book, but that was a statement I wanted to make, that they were disposable for real.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you. This has been such a treat, and we'll bring you back up at the end because I think we may have to have a discussion about sonnets, because that seems to be a little bit of a trend this evening. So we'll see you here in a few minutes. Next up, we are going to be bringing up Tony Robles, who is a poet. He actually just finished up, or is maybe still at the end of being the 2020 Carl Sandburg National Historic Site Writer in Residence, which is up there in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And he has just really been a big help here at Carolina Poets. He's helped us curate a few shows. And tonight, we had a little bit of oversight with not realizing that it was Filipino American Month. And so Tony is here to kind of give a little nod to that, and we will get that on the calendar for a more full celebration next year. But Tony is also known as the People's Poet. He was born in San Francisco and is the nephew of Filipino-American poet, historian, and social justice activist Al Robles. He was a shortlist nominee for Poet Laureate of San Francisco in 2017 and the recipient of the San Francisco Arts Commission Individual Literary Artist Grant in 2018. His two books of poetry and short stories, Cool Don't Live Here No More, A Letter to San Francisco, and Fingerprints of a Hunger Strike, both published, take on the issues of eviction, gentrification, and police violence in communities of color, which seems very on topic in today's world as well. He's also the author of two children's books, and we are very honored to have him with us this evening. So let me welcome him to the stream. Here we go. Hi, Tony. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Kim? What's going on? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's going well. I think I'm gonna quickly get off and make sure you have plenty of time. It's always such a treat to hear you read.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me get off of here.
I want to start off by just recognizing that 53 years ago on this day, Che Guevara was killed. And to start off with a quote from Che, his quote, what he said was, "If you tremble indignation at every injustice, then you are a comrade of mine." Yes, it's Filipino American History Month, the month of October. Not to be confused or mistaken for Filipino American Heritage Month. It's Filipino American History Month. And the reason it is in the month of October is because in 1587, off the coast of Morro Bay in California, the first Filipinos landed in the continental USA. This was 1587. So this was before the Mayflower. This was part of the galleon trade that went from Manila to Acapulco. And there were many, many trips back and forth and many, many Filipinos that landed in the continental United States. The Filipino American National Historical Society took it upon themselves to lobby to have Filipino American History Month recognized, and in Congress it was passed. There are many different states. I think Georgia is among one of the states that recognizes Filipino American History Month, as well as many states on the West Coast. My uncle, as Kim had said, was a very influential, very beloved figure in the Filipino American community. His name was Al Robles, and his book is called "Rappin' with 10,000 Carabaos in the Dark." It was published by the Asian American Studies Department at UCLA, and it was just reissued about a month ago. And he died in 2009. And another poet by the name of Avacha Hiltonero, who is a poet from the Bay Area, wrote a beautiful poem called Roblesque in his honor. And I will read this. It's about Uncle Al, his work, and the fact that we miss him. Roblesque, to Al Robles with love. Silencio! Al Robles is missing. It's way too quiet around here these days, and we miss him. This one-of-a-kind poetic daredevil. Transplanted culture personified, adobo con bebop, with an awe-inspiring, playful, impish smile that always let the best in us know we were at home, lifting up tradition anytime it lost its balance and tried to fall, trading the tallest of tales in the park, conjuring strength in ageless spirits older than time, or locked in a musical trance, happy to be completely under the spell of Bobby Enriquez, or a Bobby Enriquez tune at Bajones, a Pinoy homeboy on a mission. The strength of his soul reborn with every poem, a lovable rascal defying description. Silencio, where is he? Al, the Fillmore flipster, stalking creativity with a vengeance, finding pieces of creativity and truth everywhere, in everything. The eternal essence of intelligent existence, leading him on, dancing word circles all around him. There were days when none of it made any sense, but then it was funny and beautiful, ridiculous or ugly. More than once, it was both inspiring and tragic. Historic landmarks in the making, a blossoming myth-building poems, tons of stories needing to be told, and they came pouring down like an unstoppable flood, a furious waterfall out of the mouths of angry, misused farm workers, and found themselves all tangled up in the irony of a meal of Filipino soul food with a side of mango and collard greens for dessert. Silencio! If you were listening, you could see the tongue-in-cheek brilliance in the way he tasted every word as they rolled out of his mouth, in the way he digested the ambience of poems being born and and followed the rhythm of words as they came swaggering, dancing in the streets of North Beach and Caesar's Latin Palace, squashed inhibition and found a good part of his heart in the trance of hotter than hot jam sessions at Jimbo's Bop City. Al, the Fillmore flipster, a clever, predictable trickster, the undisputed poet laureate of Manila town, who comfortably wrapped himself in a mixture of Smiley Winters, Kulintang, Flip Nunez, and Sarah Vaughan. Silencio, the muse is in mourning, but there will never be enough tears to wash away the legacy of his vision. The spiritual pride and integrity of his poetry lives in the resurrection of the I Hotel, hides behind the hungry laughter of city slick hustlers, is buried beneath stolen visions and the exposure of soulless, big-time urban magicians who sell fantasies to the disillusioned. His powerful word magic conjured the reclamation of otherwise unacknowledged young men who left their all a world away on the other side of a sea of broken dreams, but never forgot to take time to heal and rejoice and laugh as they partied, gambled, danced the cha-cha, and romanced nights and sore backs away at the California Hotel, held up the economy on Columbus and the clubs on Broadway, and almost wore out the pavement up and down Kearny and Grant Streets, then came to on the same old farms picking fruit the next day. Silencio. No, there is no sadness strong enough to erase the hipness of his vision. Al Robles, our Fillmore flipster, our eternal trickster, magnificent Manong. It will never be over, and we will not be silent. So that is a poem about my uncle, who was very much a poet who was very, very much committed to the struggles of the poor. He was a advocate. He was a housing advocate, and he was a historian. He chronicled the lives of the Filipino immigrants who came to the United States in the old days. I want to read another Filipino poet who was very much beloved. He passed away a couple of years before my uncle. He passed away at a rather young age. He was in his 50s. A poet by the name of Jeff Tagami. And he was from Watsonville, California. He grew up on the farms, and his parents were farm workers. And October Light is a very, very beautiful book. And I want to read a poem from October Light. And it's called Labor of Love. And this is a poem about Jeff picking apples in the apple orchard with his mother. Labor of Love. When mother and I entered the orchard with our ladders, the morning moisture wet everything, the leaves, the apples, the dust that fell on them all night. And then that dust became mud, which stuck to our hands and dried when the sun came out. The boss who stopped by earlier in his Jeep reminded us to take our time so as not to bruise the apples they call golden delicious. How you must, with great care, gently rock them into the bin, as if putting a sleeping child to bed. It's like a labor of love, he said. Because the apples were the same color as the leaves, a light green. Picking was slow, having to reach into a clump of leaves blindly until we felt the smooth globe. Come on out, little darlings, my mother called to them, as though they were hiding. I suggested she stick with the short ladder to pick only the ones hanging low. From above, I can keep an eye on her, making sure she planted the ladder firmly in the soft earth, asking her politely to empty her bag before it got too full. It was when I ran out of ladder and I had to climb into the tree that I began singing, hoping this would ease my fear and my mother's fear for me. Careful, she said, careful. I began singing her favorite love song, I'm in the mood for love, until I had to stop and ask her for the right words, coaxing her finally to sing along, her sweet voice lifting above the scant chattering of birds in the canyon. Over the canyon, a jetliner lazily headed west, nothing between it and me but blue sky, and my black hand poking from the tops of trees and waving, there being so much love in my heart and heaven in my eyes. And again, that's Jeff Tagami, poems by Jeff Tagami, October Light. I think I'm almost done. I'll read one more poem. I saw Donald Trump in, where was it? I think it was Mills River a few weeks ago, and it was a trip, you know, seeing all those people out there with their Trump signs. And, you know, we have different factions. We have the left wing and we have the right wing. It's politics, right? Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. And we have two parties. Out of all these people that we have in this country, we just got two parties, right? But you have the left wing, and then you got the right wing. And then you have something called a chicken wing. And this is a poem called Ain't No Thing. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. In some circles, it's ain't no thang. Fried chicken is fried chicken, regardless of the political party or affiliation or educational background. You can either get down with some fried chicken or you can't. My father knew how to get down on some fried chicken. He'd deep fry it in peanut oil and serve it with a big plate of rice, arroz, and also some salad. It was so good that I'd even eat the bones. You'd have to have some hot sauce with it. I stopped at a supermarket deli this afternoon and I asked the young brother behind the counter for 3 wings. Uno, dos, tres. In Filipino, isa, dalawa, tatlo. 3 wings. I opened the box a few minutes later and I found 4 wings. I didn't ask the brother, or I didn't ask if the brother knew 3 from 4. All I knew was that I was ready to get down. And I didn't know if I was eating the left wing or the right wing. You see, the politics rages on. All I know is I was getting ready to get down. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. And I think that's it. I think my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. That was fabulous. Really great to have you on again. It's really good to have everyone on. And thank you for sharing about your uncle. That was so interesting and really just educational about the history of Filipinos as well. I did not, being in South Carolina, all that history, I don't think made it out this way.
Well,
so
it did
really
because, well, actually, I think the first Filipino settlement in the United States was in Louisiana, Manila Village, and I think that went back to the 1500s, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's a very rich history of Filipinos in the U.S. that includes being, in the southern part of the country. There's an organization called Filipino American Community of Western North Carolina, also known as FAC, and they've been an organization here for a while. There's been a Filipino community in Asheville, or at least in this area, since 1964, which would be like 50 some years, 55, 56 years, give or take, but yeah, it was great being on the Carolina Poets, and you know,
and I'm going to bring everybody back on for a second here. Thank you to all of you for just an amazing reading tonight, and just so many different voices, but also I think a lot of similar themes and forms running through. I do want to take a second because I noticed there was, I know, Tony, you do more kind of a little bit of what I would call a spoken word influence, Ginsberg, you know, that kind of old school Bay Area influence on your stuff. But you write a variety of poetry. And then I noticed that Leslie and Santiago, we heard a lot more form stuff. So maybe we could talk about, like, why are you all drawn to certain forms of poetry other than others? Oh, let me unmute Santiago here.
I call myself a ventriloquist, kind of like jokingly, because I speak with different voices. I am a professor of Spanish 16th and 17th century literature, the so-called Siglo de Oro, the golden age of Spanish literature. So like Cervantes, López de Vega, Calderón, Quevedo, Góngora. I mean, the Spanish counterparts to Shakespeare, Dryden, Milton, John Donne. So because of this, I have this natural tendency. My natural habitat is kind of traditional poetry, but then there is the bad boy inside of me, with an iconoclast, irreverent. When as a college professor, I can't allow myself to be perceived that way. So I write in a certain way, depending on where I have to give a reading or who my audience is. But I like transgression. I love the concept of transgression, and I am an iconoclast at heart, and much of my poetry is very heavy in social content. I refrain from reading much of that tonight, but a big body of my poetry, a big chunk of what I write has to do with social injustice and poverty, exploitation, violence, the works. I mean, this is, after all, the world we live in. I cannot ignore what surrounds me. But yeah.
And Tony and Leslie, I heard some of those same themes in some of your work as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jump in unless, Tony, you had something, but I am not usually, I don't consider myself a formalist necessarily in my writing, but I am interested in sort of decolonizing the forms that I do step into, and instead kind of resisting these traditional influences, and instead kind of following a more radical syntax as a means of organizing thought. I would say that's what interests me most. Awesome.
Wow.
Well, I come from, Frisco, the Bay Area. It's very, it's a very multicultural. Like, in my family, we look like the United Nations, right? So, a lot of the poems that I write, they don't really take a form. They take a form as they hit me, and I try to shape it in the way it comes when it hits me. So I don't try to shape it. I try to let it shape itself. I don't try to impose myself on the shape. I shape it the way it's given to me. I gotta say, Santiago Garcia Castilon. See, he sounds like a poet. See, I'd love to have a name like that. That sounds like a poet.
At least I have a poet's name.
What's your name? Santiago Garcia Castilon. Oh, you're a poet, man. But
I write crap, but I have a poet's name.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us.
Before we disband, let me tell you guys something, because something has happened that you may not be aware of, because while Tony was reading, I got news that the Nobel Prize for Literature was just announced, and American poet Louis Gluck was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yay! That's amazing.
That's news to some of you, and I think it's very good.
That's fabulous. I love her. Yeah. She's so great. What wonderful news to end on.
She's about $1 million richer today.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has just been so much fun. I hope everyone will tune back in on Tuesday for our special free verse reading, and then we'll be back next Thursday night. So great to see everybody again, and we'll hope to see you all soon.
Right on. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you all, and it's been a pleasure.
All right.
We'll keep in touch.